you're alive, so stay in His will and watch Him provide. Keep your faith, joy, and peace, all in Him.
Welcome to Real Talk for People of Faith. I am your host, Marzette McGarry, and
Nicole Rivas.
thank you all for joining us today. We also have our person who's supposed to be with us regularly, but she kind of neglected us, y'all. She ran off, and what you run off and do? Garia Davis is with us today.
Hello,
Say hi.
hello.
She ran off, y'all.
I've always been here in spirit. I've always been here in spirit with you guys.
She disappeared, and thank God she's with us today.
I miss my radio family.
Amen. Thank you for just honoring us with your presence, Garia.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Marzette.
You want to tell us where you been or no?
No.
She is so y'all. She been locked up. No, I'm just playing. she got out last night and we had her come. Thank you, Garia. She's out on bail. All right. And also we have Pastor Pete in the house. Pastor Pete.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
And he's back. Thank God for that. And we have a really good topic today that we've been really excited to talk about. Pastor Pete wrote a book.
Yay!
We got this black man pastor. How that sound?
I know, right?
Wrote a book, y'all, and I think it's wonderful. The book is called Prodigal Father.
Yes.
Not Prodigal Son.
Not Prodigal
Son. Father.
Prodigal Father.
We're gonna have you talk about even that. Okay. I want to talk about that. So
I'm excited.
You're excited?
Yes, I am.
Yes. So today we're gonna talk about Pastor Pete's book. It has some really interesting chapters and topics and themes in this book. Oh, thank you. So we're going to talk about it because we want everybody who feels inspired just by the conversations we're having to get this book. If someone wants to get this book, Pastor Pete, where can they get it from now? Are they able to?
Yes, they can get the book from Amazon. They can get it online from Amazon, or they can go to my website at peterwattsjr.com. And they can get the book from the website. It is available on Amazon and Kindle as well. And so, yeah, pick it up. December 16th is the date that it comes out officially.
Yay. Repeat the name again.
The name of the book is Prodigal Father.
Oh, that's right. Prodigal Father. That's right. Let's put it
Father,
here.
yeah.
Prodigal Father. This is the book. Actually, our camera's here. This is our camera.
There it is,
Prodigal
right
Father.
Prodigal
This
Father.
is the book. All right. So you guys get this book on Amazon.com. Or you said at your website,
At my
Peter
website,
Watts.
peterwattsjr.com.
Peter Watts Jr. That's WATTS.
WATTS, yes.
peterwattsjr.com. All right. So let's get into the book, The Prodigal Father. Now, first of all, why did you name the book Prodigal Father?
Well, it's really based off, of course, the story of the prodigal son. But it's the journey, my 30-year journey of searching for my biological father who had been on Skid Row all these years. And it's me finding him on Skid Row miraculously in terms of that encounter. But I looked at this story of the prodigal father kind of reversing the roles of the prodigal son. You know, in the story of the prodigal son, the son is given all his dad's wealth and he squanders it, and then he comes to himself and he comes back and his dad is receives him with his arms wide open, and the son comes back home. Well, I asked the question, well, what if the roles are reversed? What if the father takes all the riches and squanders it and is gone, and then the father comes to himself? And how is the son or the children of that father to receive that parent back? And so that was the first part or thought about the prodigal father. But then the Lord even took it a step further and said, well, he's a prodigal father. And I said, well, how are you a prodigal father, Lord? And he said, well, the word prodigal really is about squandering and taking all that you have and just giving it away, like kind of like what the world would see as foolishly. But then God said, but that's how I am with my grace. I am a prodigal father. I will just, squander everything to give to you or to spend on you all of my grace and mercy towards you. And that's what I did when I sent my son Jesus to die for you. And I was like, wow. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's slow down. Because I think there's a couple of important things there.
That's who I'm going to talk today. You know,
Who
I know she
said I
can't help
wasn't
it.
gonna
No,
talk?
I'm joking. She always says, okay, today I'm just going to let you, okay, go ahead. Now, what you going to do? She going to take this. Go ahead.
Okay, Radio Land
Yes.
and Streaming Land. That's Marzette behaving badly. It's okay. It's okay. I know y'all love me. It's okay. No. This is Nicole. Since we have an extra female voice today, Garia. Yes. So, the first thing I want to do, back up before I even ask a question. I want to spell for our audience Peter Watts so they can find you.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So Peter is the traditional way, Peter, and Watts is Watts. So you guys don't have Junior, JR. So JR period?
JR.com or JR period. Yes.
JR period. Okay. So .com. So just so you can find it so you don't have to work too hard because, it's an amazing book. And I think fatherlessness is something that a lot of people experience.
Yes.
And I have to put that in proper context because you might be thinking, well, my father was in the home, so I'm not fatherless. But a lot of people have fathers who were physically present, but emotionally absent.
Correct.
So you might still be suffering the effects of an emotional fatherlessness.
Correct.
And so this book would still be helpful to you in that respect. You might have had a father who was in the home, maybe emotionally present, but out of his role as a father for various reasons. There's lots of ways that this book might apply to you. So, and even if it doesn't apply to you, you probably know somebody who it might apply to.
Right.
So now that we've done that, let's back up a little bit because I think you did two important things there. Because I think you have prodigal in two senses. One, which is the negative connotation, which we normally understand it.
Right.
And the second is a positive connotation, the reckless abandonment of parental love. Which is, I always say that's the closest we get to understanding God.
Yes.
Is that kind of love that loves no matter what.
No matter what.
No matter what. Even in the midst of disciplining, you're still loving, and so that is our closest. And I find that interesting because I think most of our characteristics, are not bad characteristics. They're good characteristics warped. They are God's nature warped.
Right.
So even being prodigal is God's nature warped.
Right. It's and that's the effects of sin on the world. It's how we take good things and can make them ultimate things and turn them into God. So like our own children are great. Children are good things, but then we can warp that and end up worshiping our kids, and it turns into a God for us. And so
whole different thing.
Yes.
So he said at the beginning two things. So we're going to take it. We're going to take first that nature of a parent to just recklessly abandon. The good thing of that is God's love, reckless abandonment and God's love.
Yes.
The bad thing, how we warp it, he's now given us two examples. One is we warp it where we recklessly abandon ourselves in our love of children in a way that's unhealthy for them and for us.
Correct.
And then we also sometimes, even though we love our children because of our own brokenness, we squander the, what do I want to call it? It's not guardianship, but your children are on loan to you. So stewardship.
Yeah.
You recklessly abandon your stewardship of your children. And I'm feeling like with your father, it was the reckless abandonment of his position, of his stewardship of his children.
Correct.
And the process of forgiveness. So before we get to the God part of prodigal, tell me about that, because I think a lot of people experience that in many ways. So tell me, first talk me through, gosh, there's so many questions I have. Number one, did you go from hating to desiring a relationship with him, or you always wanted a relationship with him? How did that begin?
Well, I think if we back up and just kind of shortly tell my story, I grew up in a 2-parent household, lived in Inglewood, and it was about the 3rd grade that my mom decided to leave my dad because my dad started using drugs. Now, before then, we were a model family, 2-parent household, in school. People knew us in the neighborhood. My family owned their own home. We lived by the racetrack in Inglewood, and things were great. But then during that time when the crack epidemic started to come into neighborhoods, my dad got caught up in that and started using drugs. And so my mom decided to leave him because he had become verbally and physically abusive. And so we went to go live with my grandparents. And while we lived with my grandparents, that was about 3rd grade. And my dad would come visit, but oftentimes he would come visit us high on drugs. And so there would be times where he would come and say he wants to see his son, and he would come and kidnap me at gunpoint and take me from my mother, and then take me back to Inglewood, and I'd be at his house with the lights off, and every time he heard a siren, he turned the television down because he thought the FBI was coming because he was paranoid from the drugs. And so
now, question, how old were you when that was happening?
3rd grade.
And was he holding the gun at you or on the adults? At your mother, and then take you.
Taking me. Yep.
And curious, how you were 3rd grade.
Yes.
Did you develop a sense of powerlessness from that? Because the man in you in 3rd grade cannot protect your mother and cannot protect yourself. Did that foster a feeling of powerlessness in you?
No, that didn't foster a feeling of powerlessness in me. There were some other things that fostered because of my relationship or lack of relationship with my dad that manifested itself in my life in school and in marriage and even with my own kids and in my career in ministry. But the powerlessness necessarily wasn't an issue for me because I think because my grandfather was one who was a protector, and so he would oftentimes get into scuffles and fights with my dad when he was trying to kidnap me or trying to do something to my mother. And so
you had another male figure, which kind of counterbalanced that and protected you from the sense of powerlessness because he would step in and assert the power of protection.
Exactly. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So go ahead.
Yeah. And so I think it was probably about the 4th grade when my dad came and said, you know what, son, I'm really sorry for what I've done and how I've behaved. And I'm going to start sending you an allowance every month. As a way to say, I still care for you. I want to take care of you and things like that. And I remember coming home from school every day, going to the mailbox, looking for that allowance, and it never showed up. And at some point I said, you know what? This is not real. He wasn't showing up. The allowance wasn't showing up. And so I just cut him off. And so it was just me, my mom, and my younger sister and my grandparents.
How old were you when you finally made that decision to cut him off?
Between 4th and 5th grade. Yeah. Yeah. And so I grew up.
How old? Because we have international audience and they might not know the age.
9, 10.
Yeah, about 9, 10 years old.
Okay.
Yep. And so middle school, high school, college, ended up meeting my wife. And again, this is all within the context of not having a relationship with my dad, not knowing my dad, and learning how to be a man from my grandfather, who was a hard worker and owned his own business. Then I had uncles as well who were the disciplinarians. And so when I would act up, my mom would call my uncles and they would show up at the house, right? And so, but it wasn't until high school where I really kind of got a father figure out of my football coach. And so it was by virtue of playing football and getting to know my high school coach, who taught me how to drive and unfortunately taught me the birds and the bees. Right?
Did he not teach you well? Why is it unfortunate?
I think it was just reckless. It wasn't Christ-centered, right?
It wasn't Christ. It was wild birds and bees.
Right.
Okay.
Even though I was at a Catholic school, it still wasn't Christ-centered.
It wasn't Christ-centered.
Right. And so I ended up graduating high school, going to college, and met my wife. And we began to start to have a family. But because
how old were you when you met your wife?
I met my wife when I was 19.
And how old were you when you married?
21.
Okay.
So I got married at 21, not knowing really what it meant to be a man or a father, or or even models of good, healthy a marriage, and so it played itself out in raising my kids and even in my marriage. And so what developed in me, not a sense of powerlessness, but a sense of abandonment. And so because I felt abandoned by my own father, I had this sense of abandonment with relationships around me. And so it played itself out in my marriage, where in my third year in marriage, we were contemplating divorce because I thought that there was this like sense of abandonment, like with cell phones. Call my wife and okay, women don't like answer their cell phones all the time.
How often would you call your wife?
And I would call, and then I keep calling, then I keep calling, right?
Yeah.
And so I was always, she was like, dude, just I'm at the coffee shop, whatever. But it was just this sense of like, is she gonna leave me?
Yeah.
And so it was just she got tired of it, and so we were contemplating divorce, but about a power, yes.
I'm gonna slow you down, and the reason I keep slowing you down is because you're dropping so many important nuggets, and I know this is a story you've told over and over again.
Right.
So you're not realizing how many nuggets you're dropping. So the first one is because I find it interesting, and I think for people out there, notice I asked him about powerlessness, and he said, no, that wasn't my issue. Then he told the story of when he decided enough was enough with his dad, right?
Yep.
And generally, that's when you had the most pain. And for you, when enough was when you were counting on him, going to the mailbox, and he wasn't showing up for you.
Correct.
So the picking you up with the gun point, that might have been a lot for me, but that wasn't the hurt spot for you.
Right.
The hurt spot for you is I'm counting on you. You made a promise and you're not living up to that promise. Correct. So that's why abandonment came up for you. So audiences out there, a good kind of primer for you is ask yourself when your mind decided enough was enough. Because it might not be all the different drama things that other people would look at and say that mattered to them.
Right.
When did you say, I'm never going to let myself feel this way again?
Right.
I'm never going to count on him again. I'm going to stop asking for hugs. I'm going to stop expecting him to show up at graduations. Or when did you say, and it might not have been that you cut off the relationship, but you decided to stop feeling that thing.
Right.
Whatever that thing was. When you remember that memory, you could probably identify the emotion that's most pervasive in your life. Is it powerlessness? Is it abandonment?
Yep.
Like yours, or whatever it is.
Correct.
So I just want to stop there to help our listening audience say, oh, other people might look at my story and think it's this and this and that, but it's really this.
Correct. Yeah.
And we would just like to thank you for opening up, because I know it's not easy. I have 10 uncles, a father, and, a lot of men in my life. And I've heard a story, and it's gone through very, quickly. They told us quick stories and stuff like that. But the emotional part of it, of opening it up and stuff like that is not always easy. So we commend you and thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I just think that God is not a waster, and so he uses all the things that we go through in our lives, not for ourselves, but to be able to minister and help others. So ultimately, we can point people to God, and so that's what I hope that this book does. At the end of the day, I just hope that it begins to help people reconcile with their fathers or father figures, and for fathers to really reconcile with their children. And so it's a wide array of audiences and purposes with this book.
Here's my other question for you. You said your wife started getting annoyed with you calling her on her cell phone. I'm curious, and this might not have been the case, but having been a female who's dated for much longer than I wanted to date, having a man when I was dating who would be so attentive and calling me and texting me and checking on me, I can see that being cute and wonderful and thinking that's fantastic. He loves me. Finally, I don't have to call him. He's calling me. Right. was it some of that was something that before you guys got married was cute to your wife, and then once you got married, it became too much?
Well, it's crazy because I don't think it was. I don't think it. In the beginning, I behaved that way. I think it wasn't until we got married that started to come out. And the reason why it was annoying to her was because of her own father issues that she had been dealing with her dad, who was controlling of her mom, who ended up, and they ended up getting divorced because he was really controlling. And so she started to feel like, oh my God, he's behaving like my dad.
Oh, wow. So something about marriage triggered the fear in you.
Mm-hmm.
Why marriage? Why did marriage trigger the fear? Why was that a trigger?
Well, because of the statistics that says that 50%, divorce rate in the church, and we were in church and in ministry together, and so I was just afraid of like things falling apart or me not being able to hold it all together, and just again. The fear of being abandoned again. And so what ended up happening, I took a good thing of marriage and turned it into an ultimate thing to where I was really worshiping my wife in that sense. And it was like, okay.
And not in a good way.
Right. And not in a good way. And so it was almost like wanting someone to love me the way I needed to be loved, but could not get the kind of love that I needed from her, because the love that I really needed was from God. Because of my relationship with my earthly father kind of skewed the kind of relationship I had with my heavenly father, with God. And so I could not believe the promise that God said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, because I'm dealing with abandonment.
That's right.
That's so interesting.
Go ahead.
Anything? Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, I was. There's a Christian counseling show I listen to sometimes on the radio, and a woman called in, and she asked, "Well, why do we tend to marry our parents?" Right? And the counselor asked a question I never heard asked before. He asked her, which parent did you marry? Now, I've always been taught women marry their fathers and men marry their mothers. So when he asked her, which parent did you marry? I was a little bit shaken.
Right.
And she was shaken. She started stuttering. She said, well, I'm a woman. And the psychologist said something very interesting, which has stuck with me since. He says, no, you do not marry the opposite sex parent. You marry the parent with whom you have the most unresolved issues. Whether that is your mother or whether that is your father. That's the parent you marry. And your unresolved issue was abandonment.
Correct.
So you married the person who had control, who's going to try to create space, because she had control from her father. So her instinct is to create space.
Yep.
And you have abandonment, so your instinct is to cross all boundaries.
Exactly.
And you crossing her boundaries is going to trigger her control, and so it just ends up this circle. So you both married your fathers.
Yeah, we did. And so, so with that, it was just interesting, throughout our marriage. And so it wasn't until I was able to identify that being the issue that I was able to begin that journey of inner healing from the issue of abandonment. And has it gone away? No, not at all, because I was just dealing with it not too long ago with a friendship where I thought, should I let this person get this close to me? Because it seems like there is this sense of like they don't want connection anymore. And so I started feeling some type of way. And I was like, well, let me send a message and see if they respond back, or let me, call and see if they respond back to my message. And if they don't, then maybe that's them saying they don't want to be in a friendship anymore. And oh my God, if that's the case, and so it's just all of these things that play out in my life when it comes to that issue. And so until there is, complete healing, I think, I'll be dealing with this all the time. And I'm not sure if God would even, if it would even resolve itself completely. Just because we're just broken from sin, and I know that God can restore us completely, and so I pray for that. But I just wait with great expectation for that to happen.
But since you've been able to name it, that helps, because when you started experiencing that with the friend, you can figure out, oh, this is my abandoned issue. And you can respond appropriately.
Yeah, so I can respond appropriately in friendships, in my marriage, with my kids, on my job. And so it makes me more aware of when those things are happening, because I'll feel it inside me. I'm like, that I know what that feeling is. So this is how these are the tools I need to use to combat that.
And you know what? I think that's healing. That is healing, whether or not you still feel it. Right. And I believe when you be able to take this message and take it to other people and young men, and you're being so honest, I think that is a healing process too. And that will get you to the place of wholeness. So don't ever feel like I mean, I know that feeling does come up. I do. Yeah. I know it will come up, but the fact that you're, on the radio telling your message, you pin the book, and you understand that, has to bring some type of, healing, to you. So, and it's
and I don't see it as an obstacle. I actually see it as a gift.
Yeah,
it is.
That a lot of people say, man, you're too open with everything. You share your feelings, too much. And I just think that that's a gift that God has given me to be able to do that, because it opens the door for other people to begin to access their true feelings, to be able to deal with those things in their lives.
And Satan has powers and secrets. Things that aren't secret takes away the enemy's power. A lot of shame comes from secret, because you're ashamed of it, and you're always afraid that people are going to discover it.
Right.
When you expose it, you take away the enemy's power to use that against you.
That's good. What script? Oh, go ahead. We only have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes, but we will continue, because we're going to continue, because we want to allow him to get really into the topics in his book. Then you can ask your question, because he said we just have like less than a minute and a half now. So is there anything that you want us to know, or you want to just convey about any topic in your book? And then we're going to go to part 2.
Yeah. Well, I just kind of just letting people know, I found my father on Cinco de Mayo. So after 30 years, we were able to reconnect. He had fallen out in the streets. A Good Samaritan called the ambulance. They took him to the hospital, to California Hospital. Interestingly enough, that's where I was born. And so he was in California Hospital, and they asked him if he had any next of kin. He said no. He said, but I do know that I have a son that pastors a church in Los Angeles. So the hospital did a Google search on me and found me, and then inboxed me on Facebook and said, we think we found your father. And so I went to California Hospital, saw him for the first time, and saw him in the bed, 10% functioning of his heart, hugged him, and we started trying to build this relationship from that point. And so it's been since Cinco de Mayo that we've reconnected after 30 years.
This year? Cinco de Mayo this year.
Really? Yeah, so I am now in the process of getting to know someone that I haven't seen since 3rd grade.
Since you were 8 or 9. Wow. So we're going to start from there. Well, we want to thank all of you for joining us today for our show, Real Talk for People of Faith. We thank Pastor Pete again for sharing with us. We really want to hear more about this. So please join us again next week, because Pastor Pete, he'll go more into depth about the topic of forgiveness, right? We're going to talk about forgiveness, not forgiveness, y'all. Forgiveness, which is a process that you've been going through as a part of reconciling with your dad, right? Correct. All right. So thank all of you for joining us. Again, Garia, say bye to everybody.
Bye, Radio Land, for now.
Bye. She'll be out a little longer, so she'll join us the next show next week, right, Garia?
Yes, I will. I'll be here.
She'll be here, right?
Yes.
All right. And Nicole, say bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. We love y'all. Go to our website, innercitywomenoffaith.org. That's innercitywomenoffaith.org. Give us your prayer requests or any comments or questions you have. Don't forget to go to peterwattsjr.com.
Correct.
peterwattsjr.com and check out Prodigal Son, or go to Amazon. Prodigal Father, or go to amazon.com and get his book Prodigal Son.